2 weeks ago, my sister accidentally added me to a family group chat called Real Family Only. There were 847 unread messages waiting for me. 7 years of them talking like I didn't exist. 7 years of jokes, screenshots, side comments, and little celebrations every time something in my life fell apart. They called me the charity case. They bet on how long my marriage would last. They laughed when it ended. And the worst part wasn't my sister. It wasn't even my aunt. It was my mother. I still remember the exact message because I screenshotted every single word. No skipped lines. No cropped corners. No missing timestamps. After my divorce, my mother wrote, "At least she doesn't have kids. One less grandchild to worry about." I stared at that sentence until the words stopped looking real. Then I went back and kept reading. Message after message, year after year, I watched my own family build a version of me they could mock together. I wasn't a daughter. I wasn't a sister. I wasn't even a full person to them. I was a running joke with a sad life and predictable failures. And when I finished saving all 847 messages, I sent one reply. "Thanks for the proof." That was it. One text. Then I left the chat. What happened 4 days later at my grandmother Eleanor's 70th birthday party is something my family still hasn't recovered from, and honestly, I don't think they ever will. But to explain that night, I need to take you back to the moment I first realized something had been wrong for much longer than I wanted to admit. Before I do, if respect matters to you, subscribe. Not for noise, not for spectacle, just for stories that tell the truth quietly. 6 weeks before that group chat appeared on my phone, Grandma Eleanor called me at 7 in the morning. She never called that early unless it mattered. "Tori, honey," she said, her voice soft and a little breathless, "I'm having a party for my 70th. I want you there." For a second, I couldn't speak. Not because I didn't want to go, because she had called me herself. And in my family, that meant more than it should have. The thing about being the extra in your own family is, you learn not to ask too many questions. You learn to accept invitations without wondering why they came directly to you this time. You learn not to notice when information arrives late or not at all. You learn to fill in the blanks yourself. After I hung up with Grandma, I sat on the edge of my bed longer than I needed to, phone still in my hand, staring at nothing in particular. It should have felt simple. A birthday party, 70th, family gathering. But nothing in my family had ever been simple. For 10 years, I had been the one who showed up quietly. No announcements, no photos, no captions about family is everything. Just presence. Saturday mornings, driving Grandma to cardiology appointments. Sunday afternoons, cleaning her kitchen while she napped in the next room. Evenings when the house got too quiet for her, and she'd call just to hear another voice breathing on the line. I never posted about it, never mentioned it at holidays, never kept score. Some of you listening know exactly what that feels like, being there without being seen. If you do, tell me where you're listening from. I always wonder how far these stories travel. My sister, Megan, had a different kind of presence. She showed up for Christmas photos, for milestone moments, for anything that looked good framed in soft lighting and posted to 50,000 followers. She had captions ready before the event even started. "So grateful for family. Wouldn't trade these moments for anything." People believed it. Maybe she believed it too. 3 days before the party, I called my mom to ask something small. "Hey, what's the dress code for Grandma's birthday?" There was a pause, just a second too long. "Oh, nothing fancy," she said lightly. "Just casual, honey. Casual." I repeated it back in my head like I always did, making sure I hadn't misunderstood. "Okay," I said, "thanks." That afternoon I stopped by her house to drop off Grandma's medication. I'd picked it up on my way home from work, 12-hour shift, still in scrubs, hair tied back, exhaustion sitting behind my eyes. Mom was in the kitchen when I walked in, back turned, phone on the counter. I wasn't trying to look, but the screen lit up, and the preview was right there. From Megan. "Don't forget cocktail dress. Photographer arrives at 4. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just stood there, staring at those words like they might rearrange themselves into something else if I waited long enough. Casual. I placed the medication on the counter gently, quietly. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't ask questions. Because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't confusion. It wasn't a mistake. It was something colder than that, and for the first time I didn't try to explain it away. There's a moment, small, almost invisible, When you stop giving people the benefit of the doubt. Not out of anger, not out of pride. Just exhaustion. That moment came for me the next evening. I was sitting on my couch, still in my scrubs, takeout untouched on the table, staring at my phone longer than necessary. Then I did something I almost never did. I called Megan. We weren't close. We shared a mother, but that was about it. Different fathers, different childhoods, different versions of what family meant. Still, she was my sister. Or at least I kept telling myself she was. "Hey," I said when she picked up. "Just calling about Grandma's party. Do you need help with anything?" There was a pause. Not a busy pause. Not a distracted pause. A measured one. "Oh," she said finally. "Grandma invited you too?" "Too." The word landed softly, but it stayed. "She called me herself," I replied, careful with my tone. Another pause. "Right," Megan said. "I mean, it's a family thing, so—" I waited. Because sometimes silence tells you more than words. "What does that mean?" I asked. "Nothing," she said quickly. "Forget it. I gotta go." The call ended. Just like that. I stared at my phone, feeling something settle in my chest, not sharp, not loud, just heavy. Then, 20 minutes later, it buzzed again. A voice message from Megan. I pressed play without thinking. Her voice came through, slightly muffled, like she'd turned away from the phone. "Oh my God, she's so annoying," she said, "calling me like we're best friends or something." Laughter in the background. "She acts like she's such a VIP just because Grandma likes her. I don't even get what Grandma sees in her." More laughter. Then the recording cut off. Silence. A second later, a text popped up. "Oops. Sent that by accident. Don't mind it, lol." I read it once. Then again. 7 words. That was all I got. No correction. No apology. No attempt to explain. Just, "Don't mind it." I set my phone down slowly. Because something inside me finally clicked into place. This wasn't a bad day. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't sisters arguing. This was normal. Not new behavior, just newly visible. And once you hear the truth out loud like that, you can't unhear it. You can't go back to pretending it was never there. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even turn on the TV. I just sat there in the quiet of my apartment and let a different kind of clarity settle in. Some of you know that feeling. When things don't explode, they just become clear. If you've ever had a moment like that when someone showed you exactly who they were, what did you do next? I didn't know it yet. But I was already closer to the truth than I had ever been before. That night, sleep didn't come the way it normally does. It didn't drift in quietly or wrap around me like it used to after long hospital shifts. It stayed just out of reach, and when that happens, your mind starts filling the silence with things you've been avoiding. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling of my apartment, small, quiet, completely mine, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself think about everything I'd been pushing aside. I was 32, divorced, working 60-hour weeks in the ICU. It's funny how people assume strength looks loud. For me, it looked like showing up to work, caring for strangers with steady hands, then coming home to a place where no one was waiting. Except one person, Grandma Eleanor. She was the only one in my family who never made me feel like I had to earn my place. When I was 12 and crying because every other girl had a dad at the father-daughter dance, she showed up in a suit and bow tie and danced with me all night. Didn't explain. Didn't apologize. She just showed up, and she kept showing up, through college, through my first job, through my marriage, through the night everything fell apart. I didn't mean to think about that part, but once your mind opens certain doors, it doesn't close them gently. 2 years ago, I found the messages. Marcus. My husband. 8 months of conversations with someone else. Late nights. Inside jokes that weren't mine anymore. I remember calling my mom, barely able to breathe. "Mom," I said, "he's been cheating. I don't know what to do." There was a pause. Then she said, carefully, "Well, you have been working a lot." I didn't respond. Didn't argue. I just hung up. Some of you listening know exactly what that feels like, not just being hurt, but being blamed for the hurt. Megan's response came differently, publicly. I had posted something vague online, not details, just pain. The kind people sometimes share when they don't know where else to put it. She commented, Some people just aren't meant to keep a man. 4 likes. My mother. My aunt. 2 cousins. I deleted the post. Then I deleted the account. And told myself it didn't matter. That's what I always did. Made things smaller so they wouldn't break me. But Grandma called me every day that first month. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes I cried. Sometimes she didn't say anything at all, just stayed on the line so I wouldn't feel alone. It's not your fault, she told me once. No hesitation. No conditions. Just truth. I turned onto my side, pulling the blanket closer, letting that memory sit with me. Because now, lying there in the dark, something else started to form. A question I hadn't allowed myself to ask before. What if this wasn't random? What if it wasn't just a few bad moments, or misunderstood jokes, or personality differences? What if there had always been something else? Something I wasn't meant to see. Something everyone else already knew. I closed my eyes. And for the first time, I didn't try to dismiss that thought. I let it stay. And somewhere between that question and the quiet of that room, a part of me stopped trying to make excuses for them. I didn't know it yet, but I was only a few days away from finding proof. 4 days before my grandmother's party, at 11:02 p.m., my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. After a shift like that, 2 codes back to back, 1 loss, 1 save. You don't really have energy left for anything personal. You just want silence, maybe a shower, maybe sleep. But something made me look. A notification. Megan Harper added you to Real Family Only. I read it once. Then again. Real Family Only. The words didn't make sense at first, not because they were confusing, but because they felt deliberate. Like something I was never supposed to see. My thumb hovered over the screen. There's a kind of instinct your body has when something isn't right. Not fear exactly, just a quiet warning. I felt that, and then I tapped. The chat opened. I didn't scroll slowly. I didn't ease into it. I went straight to the top the way you do when you already know whatever you're about to find isn't going to be small. The group had been created 7 years ago. 7 members. My mom, Megan, Aunt Linda, 2 aunts from Ohio, 3 cousins, 8 people. Everyone. Except me. Except Grandma. 7 years. 847 unread messages. I stared at that number in the corner of the screen, glowing like it meant something. Because it did. I checked the most recent message, 2 days ago. Normal conversation. Complaints about neighbors, weekend plans, nothing that looked like what my chest was already preparing for. No one had noticed I'd been added. No one had said my name. I scrolled. All the way back. To the very first message. Sent the day the group was created. From Aunt Linda. Finally, a place to talk without you-know-who seeing. My breath caught. Then Megan replied. Charity case free zone. And my mother wrote, girls, don't be mean. But yeah, this is nice. I didn't move, didn't blink. I just sat there in the dark, phone lighting up my hands, feeling something inside my chest shift in a way I couldn't undo. They had a name for me. Not Tori, not daughter, not sister. Charity case. And that was just message 1. I should have stopped there. Closed the app, turned off my phone, pretended I never saw it. Some people would. Some people protect themselves that way. But I didn't. Because when you've spent years wondering if something is wrong, and then you finally get proof, you don't look away. You keep going. Even when it hurts. Especially then. I started scrolling. And somewhere between the first laugh reaction and the first inside joke I didn't understand, I realized something that stayed with me long after that night. They hadn't just excluded me. They had built an entire version of me that they could all agree not to respect. And I was about to see exactly how far that went. The first few messages didn't hit all at once. They built, slowly, like something tightening around you, 1 layer at a time. At first it was small things, inside jokes I didn't understand, plans for holidays I had been told were low-key or just immediate family, photos, so many photos of dinners, birthdays, weekends away, smiling faces, clinking glasses, mom with her arm around Megan, captions like perfect night and family time. I stared at those pictures longer than I should have, because I remembered those same weekends. I remembered being told, oh, it's nothing big. We'll do something later with you. You're busy anyway. I had believed them, not because I was naive, But because believing felt easier than questioning, I kept scrolling. And then I found the thread where it stopped being subtle. Megan. New rule, we call her Cece from now on. Aunt Linda. Cece. Megan. Charity case. Cousin Amy. Dead. And then, my mother. That's terrible. But also kind of accurate, lol. I stopped breathing for a second. Just a second. But long enough for something inside me to drop. Kind of accurate. I read it again. Not to understand it, but to make sure I hadn't imagined it. Because when something hurts that specifically, your brain tries to protect you. It looks for a different meaning. A softer version. There wasn't one. I kept going. Because at that point, stopping would have felt like lying to myself. More messages. More patterns. When I lost my first nursing job at 26 budget cuts, nothing personal, they celebrated. Aunt Linda. Called it, knew she couldn't hack it. Megan. How long till she asks mom for money? My mother. She won't, too proud, that's the problem with her. The problem with me. Not the job loss, not the situation. Me. I swallowed, my throat tight, but my hands, steady. Strangely steady. Like I had stepped outside of myself and was just documenting something clinical. Like a chart. Like a case. Then I reached the messages about Marcus. About when I started dating him. Megan. Oh my God, Cece has a boyfriend. Aunt Linda? Taking bets on how long this lasts. Cousin Amy. 18 months. Megan. I give it 2 years max. They were laughing. Before it even began, before there was anything to fail, they had already decided how my life would end. Some of you listening have felt that before, being judged before you even get a chance to try. And the worst part isn't the judgment. It's realizing they were waiting for you to prove them right. I kept scrolling. Because now, I needed to see all of it. Not pieces. Not highlights. All of it. Every version of me they had created. Every moment they had reduced me to something smaller. I didn't cry. Not yet. Because something else was starting to take shape underneath the hurt. Not anger. Not exactly. Something quieter, clearer. Like the beginning of understanding. And I knew the worst part was still ahead. By the time I found the messages about my wedding, it was already past 2 in the morning. The apartment was completely silent. No traffic, no neighbors. Just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the light from my phone cutting through the dark. I remember thinking, this is the part where it can't get worse. I was wrong. Megan. Cece is engaged. Aunt Linda. To who? Does he know what he's getting into? Megan. Starting the divorce pool now. Cousin Amy. I've got $50 on under 5 years. Aunt Linda. I'll take 3. And then my mother. I didn't want to open it. I actually paused before tapping, like somehow delaying it would change what was inside. It didn't. You girls are awful. Put me down for 4 years. My mother had placed a bet on how long my marriage would last. Not if I'd be happy. Not if he was good to me. Not if I was okay. Just how long until it failed. I sat there, staring at the screen, and for the first time that night, I felt something go completely still inside me. Not shattered, not overwhelmed, just still. Because there's a point where pain stops being sharp. It becomes quiet, and that quiet is dangerous, in a different way. I kept scrolling. Of course I did. Because I needed to know if it ended there. If maybe, somewhere later, someone had defended me, said something kind, anything, but the thread didn't change. It just continued. Jokes. Reactions. More bets layered on top of older ones. Like my life was a timeline they were tracking for entertainment. And then I found it. The date I had been avoiding, 2 years ago. The week everything fell apart. I searched for it directly this time. My fingers moving faster, more precise. I didn't scroll. I went straight to it. Megan? Guys, guess what? Aunt Linda. What? Megan. Cece's getting divorced. Aunt Linda. No way, I knew it. Cousin Amy. Who won the bet? Aunt Linda. Hold on, 4 years and 3 months. Megan. That's basically yours. Aunt Linda. Pay up, ladies. I read that part twice. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I needed to fully register what they had done. They didn't just joke. They didn't just predict. They collected money. Over my marriage ending. I scrolled a little further. And that's when I saw my mother again. Just got off the phone with her. She was crying. Aunt Linda. And? A pause in the thread. Then. She'll get over it. I closed my eyes for a second. Just one. Because I already knew what was coming next. I had seen a version of it before. But seeing it here, in writing, unchanged, undeniable, was different. And when I opened my eyes again, there it was, exactly as I remembered. Exactly as it had been said. No softer, no context. Just truth. The next message didn't come right away. There was a gap in the thread, just a few minutes, but it felt longer. Long enough for me to hope, briefly, that maybe it would stop there. That maybe my mother's last message was the worst of it. It wasn't. At least she doesn't have kids. I stared at the screen. Didn't scroll. Didn't breathe. Just stared. And then the second line came through, right underneath it. One less grandchild to worry about. I don't know how long I sat there after that. Time didn't feel real anymore. Because something about those words, it didn't just hurt. It erased something. Not just my marriage. Not just that moment in my life. It erased the version of me that thought somewhere, deep down, that my mother still saw me as her daughter first. After that, the messages kept going. Megan. Silver lining. Cousin Amy. Honestly though, who would cheat on someone that boring? Megan. Right? I'm surprised he waited this long. 47 messages. I counted them. 47 messages dissecting my divorce like it was a storyline they were reviewing. What I did wrong. Why he left. What I lacked. Not one message asking if I was okay. Not one suggestion to call me. Not one moment of hesitation. Just analysis. Entertainment. Consensus. By the time I reached the end of that thread, my eyes burned, but there were no tears left. Not because it didn't matter. Because it mattered too clearly. The kind of clarity that doesn't leave room for denial anymore. My hands had stopped shaking. That was the first thing I noticed. They were steady. Completely steady. I flexed my fingers slightly, just to be sure. Still steady. Something had shifted. The pain was still there, but it wasn't in control anymore. Underneath it, something else had taken its place. Something colder. Not cruel. Not vengeful. Just certain. I went back to the very beginning of the chat. Not to reread. To work. Screenshot. Scroll. Screenshot. Every message. Every reaction. Every name attached to every word. I didn't rush. I didn't skip. I treated it the same way I treated patient charts, careful, complete, precise. Folder name. Real family only archive. Because if there was one thing I understood now, it was this. They had already told the story. I didn't need to twist it. I didn't need to add anything. All I had to do was preserve it. At some point while I was saving everything, I came across a message from 6 months ago that made me pause. Megan. Grandma's getting weird. She has this notebook she writes in constantly. Aunt Linda. What kind of notebook? Megan. I don't know. I saw her writing names in it. My chest tightened slightly. Then the next message. I saw Cece's name in there, like, a lot. I read that line again. Slower this time. Because suddenly, something clicked. A memory. Grandma's voice, soft but certain. I keep track, honey. I always keep track. At the time, I thought she meant emotions, moments, feelings. But now, sitting there at nearly 4 a.m, surrounded by 7 years of proof, I started to wonder if she meant something else entirely. Something written down. Something real. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel alone with what I had just found. I finished screenshotting everything at 4:17 a.m. 847 messages. 7 years. All of it saved. My phone battery was down to 12%. My eyes were dry, and the sky outside my window had started to turn that faint gray that comes just before sunrise. The group chat was still quiet. No new messages. No reactions. No one had noticed. They were all asleep. Completely unaware that the version of me they had built in that chat, the one they laughed at, reduced, predicted, was now the one holding the full record of who they really were. I scrolled back to the bottom one last time. Just to be sure. Nothing had changed. The last message was still from 2 days ago. Normal. Harmless. Like the rest of it hadn't existed. I opened a new text. My thumbs hovered over the screen for a moment, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I understood that whatever I sent would be the line. The point where everything shifted. I didn't need to explain. Didn't need to argue. Didn't need to defend myself. They had already done all the talking. So I typed, slowly. Thanks for the proof. No punctuation at the end. Just the sentence. Clear. Final. I read it once. Then I pressed send. Immediately, I left the group. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then my phone started ringing. Megan. I declined. It rang again. Declined. Then my mother. Declined. The calls came one after another, overlapping, urgent, relentless. Then the messages. Megan. Tori, please pick up. I swear it was an accident, adding you. Please can we talk? My mother. Honey, whatever you read, it's not what it looks like. We were just venting. Every family does this. Aunt Linda. Don't blow this out of proportion. This is private family stuff. Private. That word landed differently now. Because there's a difference between privacy and hiding. More messages flooded in. Apologies that didn't quite sound like apologies. Explanations that shifted blame. Justifications wrapped in softer language. Megan. We love you, you know that, right? My mother. Let's talk like adults. Aunt Linda. This is why we didn't include you. You're too sensitive. I actually let out a small breath at that one. Not a laugh. Just recognition. Because even now, even with everything exposed, they were still following the same pattern. Minimize. Redirect. Blame. By 4:45, there were over 60 messages. I didn't read all of them. I didn't need to. I had already seen enough. I turned my phone off. Completely. Not silent. Not do not disturb. Off. The apartment fell into a different kind of quiet. One that wasn't heavy anymore. I walked over to the window. The sky had shifted from gray to soft blue. Morning. I rested my hand against the glass and thought about what came next. There were options. A lot of them. I could send everything to extended family. Post it online. Expose every name attached to every message. Burn it all down. For a moment, I imagined it. What it would look like. How quickly things would spread. How impossible it would be for them to explain it away. And then, I let that thought go. Because that wasn't what I wanted. Not really. I didn't want noise. I didn't want chaos. I wanted something else. Something quieter. Something they couldn't talk their way out of. Grandma's party was in 4 days. 70 years. Everyone would be there. Friends, neighbors, family, people who mattered to her. I wasn't going to ruin that day. But I also wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I didn't need to. Because for the first time, I had the truth. And I knew exactly when I was going to let it speak. 3 days before the party, there was a knock on my door. Not soft. Not hesitant. Measured. Like the person on the other side had already decided how the conversation was going to go. I opened it. Megan stood there in full makeup, hair perfectly styled, designer bag clutched like a prop she didn't know where to put. Her eyes were glossy. Not quite crying. But close enough to suggest it. Tori, please, she said. Can we talk? I stepped aside. Didn't answer. Just let her in. She walked into my apartment slowly, looking around like she'd never really seen it before. Which, to be fair, she hadn't. Megan had never visited. Not once. She sat on the edge of my couch, careful, controlled. I'm so sorry, she started quickly. That chat, it just got out of hand. I leaned against the wall, arms relaxed at my sides. We never meant it like that, she continued. It was just jokes. People vent. You know how families are. I didn't respond. Because I was curious how far she would go without interruption. She swallowed, adjusting her tone. The betting thing, that wasn't even my idea. That was Aunt Linda. I just went along with it. I was young. You were 22, I said. She blinked. Like she hadn't expected me to speak yet. And you did it again last year, I added, when you bet on whether I'd get promoted. A flicker crossed her face. You saw that? I saw everything, Megan. Silence. For a second, the performance slipped. Just slightly. Then she leaned forward. Softer now. Okay, but you can't tell Grandma. There it was. Not remorse. Priority. She's fragile, Megan said quickly. This could literally kill her if she found out. I tilted my head a little. Now you care about Grandma's health? Her jaw tightened. I've always cared. You visited her twice last year. I have a business to run. You have an Instagram account. That landed. Harder than anything else I'd said. We looked at each other then. Not like sisters. Like two people who had finally stopped pretending. Megan stood up slowly. "You're going to ruin everything," she said, her voice lower now, less polished. "I'm not doing anything," I replied. "I'm just done pretending." Her expression shifted again. This time, there was no softness left, no gloss, no effort to repair. "You know," she said, walking toward the door. "This is why no one likes you." The words hung in the air, familiar, rehearsed. Probably said before, just not where I could hear it. I opened the door. "And you," I said calmly, "always need someone else to be smaller so you can feel bigger." She stopped for a second. Just a second. Then she left. No slam, no final word. Just the quiet click of the door closing behind her. I stood there for a moment after. Not shaken. Not angry. Just clear. Because that conversation hadn't changed anything. It had confirmed everything. There was no misunderstanding to fix. No apology waiting underneath. No version of this where we sat down and talked it out and suddenly became sisters again. That version didn't exist. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to find it. I walked back into my apartment, picked up my phone, and turned it back on. The messages were still there. Unread. Unanswered. Unnecessary. I set the phone down again. Because the next time I saw them, it wouldn't be in a chat. It would be at the party. In front of everyone. And this time, I wouldn't be the only one who knew the truth. The day of my grandmother's party arrived quietly. No messages. No calls. No last-minute instructions. Just silence. The kind that usually meant something was being planned without me. But this time, I didn't go looking for it. I got ready slowly. Not rushed. Not anxious. Just intentional. I stood in front of my closet for a while before choosing the dress navy blue. Simple. Fitted just enough to feel like myself without trying to prove anything. Cocktail dress. Not casual. I had learned that lesson already. Hair pulled back, minimal makeup, nothing dramatic, nothing that asked for attention. I wasn't there to be seen. Not in the way they understood it. When I arrived, the house looked exactly how Grandma would have wanted it. Soft lights strung across the backyard. White chairs arranged neatly. Flowers, real ones, not decorative, set carefully on each table. It was beautiful. Effort had gone into it. Care. The kind of care I recognized. The kind that didn't come from Megan. I stepped through the gate, and everything shifted. My mother saw me first. Her smile froze halfway across her face. Not dramatic. Just interrupted. Megan followed her gaze. Her hand tightened slightly around the glass she was holding. Aunt Linda turned next, spilled a drop of wine onto her sleeve. 3 reactions. 3 confirmations. They hadn't expected me to come. Or maybe they had hoped I wouldn't. "Tori," my mother said, recovering quickly, her voice lifting into something practiced. "You made it." "Grandma invited me," I replied. Simple. Neutral. True. "Of course," she said, nodding too quickly. "Of course she did." For the next 2 hours, I moved through the party like I had done so many times before. Seen but not included. When the photographer gathered people for pictures, I was directed to the back. "Better lighting in the front," my mother explained lightly. When servers passed appetizers, they skipped past me without noticing. When guests asked who I was, Megan answered before I could. "Just a cousin." Just. That word again. I didn't correct her. Not yet. Because correcting her would have been about convincing people. And I wasn't there to convince anyone. I was there to let something else happen. Something that didn't need my voice to be valid. At one point, the photographer called for a full family photo. Everyone gathered. Positions assigned. My mother next to Grandma. Megan on the other side. Aunt Linda close enough to lean in. "Tori, honey," my mom said, glancing back, "can you stand behind? Just for this one?" I stepped where she pointed. Partially hidden. Again. A familiar place. One of my great aunts, someone older, quieter, not part of the chat, leaned toward me slightly. "Aren't you Diane's older daughter?" she asked softly. "Yes." "Then why aren't you up front?" I held her gaze for a second. Then I smiled, just a little. "Good question." Before she could respond, another voice cut through the space. Calm. Clear. "Tori, sweetheart, come sit with me for a moment." "Grandma?" Every conversation paused. Not dramatically. Just enough. I stepped forward, moving past people who suddenly didn't know where to look. Grandma reached for my hand when I got close. Her grip was warm, steady. "Stay until the end tonight," she said quietly, so only I could hear. I looked at her. Really looked. Her eyes were sharp. Not confused. Not fragile. Knowing. "I have something to say," she added. My chest tightened slightly. Not from fear. From recognition. Because in that moment, I understood something I hadn't fully allowed myself to believe before. I wasn't the only one who knew. And whatever was about to happen had already been set in motion. There's a specific kind of humiliation that doesn't make a scene. It doesn't raise voices. It doesn't draw attention. It just places you slightly outside of everything and lets you stand there long enough to feel it. That's where I was when Megan picked up the microphone. It had been almost 2 hours since I arrived. Long enough for conversations to settle, for drinks to circulate, for people to forget I was there again. She tapped her glass lightly. A practiced gesture. The kind that says everyone look at me without needing to say it out loud. "Hi everyone," Megan began, smiling wide, voice warm and polished. "I just want to say a few words about my amazing grandmother." The crowd turned toward her instantly. Of course they did. Megan knew how to hold attention. She talked about childhood memories, about baking cookies in Grandma's kitchen, about lessons learned, about how much Grandma had shaped who she was. Her voice wavered in the right places. She paused at the right moments. She even dabbed her eyes with a small, monogrammed handkerchief. Subtle, elegant, perfectly timed. It was impressive. If you didn't know the truth, you would have believed every word. "I'm just so grateful," she continued, her voice softening, "to be the granddaughter who's been by your side all these years." Applause followed. Warm, immediate. My mother smiled like this was everything she had expected. Aunt Linda wiped her eyes. People nodded, touched. And I stood there, in the back, doing quiet math in my head. 15 visits in 5 years. Maybe. Compared to every week, every appointment, every late-night call. But Megan had something I didn't. An audience. A distant cousin turned toward me, curious. "Aren't you going to say something?" she asked. Before I could answer, Megan appeared beside me, like she had anticipated the question. "Oh, Tori's so busy with her nursing job," she said lightly, placing a hand near my arm but not quite touching. "She doesn't really have time for speeches." A few people chuckled politely. My mother nodded along. I felt the weight of their attention shift briefly toward me. Not interested. Just acknowledging. Then already moving on. A week ago, I would have smiled. Said nothing. Let it pass. But something in me had changed. Not louder. Just firmer. "That's okay," I said evenly. "Grandma knows who's actually been there." It wasn't sharp. It wasn't raised. But it landed. Megan's smile didn't disappear. It paused. Just enough to reveal something underneath. Across the yard, Grandma was watching. Our eyes met. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. Not yet. But there was something in her expression. Steady, certain. That said more than any reaction could have. "Not now." That's what it meant. I understood. So I stepped back. Let the moment pass. Let the party continue. Because whatever was coming next wasn't meant to interrupt. It was meant to replace everything that had just been said. And this time, no one would be able to laugh it off. The sun had started to dip when Grandma reached for her glass. Not loud. Not rushed. Just enough to bring the room back to her. "Everyone," she said, her voice calm but carrying. "Before you go, I'd like a moment." The conversation softened, then stopped. People turned. Chairs shifted slightly. Grandma stood slowly, one hand resting on the table for balance, but her posture steady, clear. "I've listened to a lot today," she continued. "Beautiful words, lovely memories." A small smile. Then it faded. "And I'm grateful for them." A pause, long enough to change the air. "But I think," she said gently, "it's time we talk about something a little more honest." No one moved. Not my mother. Not Megan. I felt it before I understood it. That subtle shift when something real is about to surface. Grandma turned her head slightly. Her eyes found mine. "Tori," she said softly, "come stand with me." And just like that, everything that had been hidden for 7 years was about to be seen. I walked toward her slowly. Not because I was unsure, but because I understood that once I stood beside her, there was no going back to how things had been. Grandma took my hand as I reached her. Warm, steady. This, she said, looking out at the guests, is my granddaughter, Tori. Not cousin. Not maybe. Granddaughter. The word settled over the crowd. Some people nodded. Some glanced at my mother. Others just watched, waiting. I want to talk about the person who has truly been there for me, Grandma continued. Not occasionally, not when it's convenient, but consistently, quietly. I felt my chest tighten. Not from fear, from being seen. Every doctor's appointment, she said. Every Sunday afternoon. Every late night when I didn't want to be alone. A pause. Not once did she ask for recognition. My mother shifted in her seat. Megan looked down briefly, then back up, her expression tightening. Grandma didn't look at them. She kept her focus forward. I've kept track, she added, reaching into her cardigan and pulling out a small, worn leather notebook. The same one. I write things down, she said simply. Who shows up? Who doesn't? A quiet ripple moved through the crowd. And tonight, Grandma said, opening it slowly, I think it's time I read some of it out loud. Grandma adjusted her glasses and turned the first page. Her hands didn't shake. That was the first thing I noticed. March 15th, 2019, she read. Tori drove me to cardiology, waited 3 hours, brought me soup after. A quiet stillness settled over the yard. She turned the page. August 22nd, 2020. Tori cleaned the house, did laundry, fixed the back door hinge. Another page. January 5th, 2022. I fell on the stairs. Tori arrived in 20 minutes, stayed overnight. She paused, lifted her eyes not to me, but outward. Same day, she added, voice still even. Megan posted a spa day. A shift in the crowd. Subtle but real. Grandma continued. September 17th, 2024. Tori's divorce finalized. I called her daily for a month. A breath. Her mother did not call once. My mother's face went pale. No one spoke. No one interrupted. 10 years of quiet moments written, dated, undeniable were now sitting in the open. Grandma closed the notebook halfway. I didn't write these things down to judge, she said. I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget what love actually looks like. Her hand tightened gently around mine. And I haven't forgotten. Across from us, Megan shifted her weight. My mother looked down at her hands. Aunt Linda stared straight ahead, unmoving. The story they had told for years was unraveling without a single raised voice. Grandma didn't rush. She let the silence sit. Not the kind that feels empty. The kind that makes people aware of themselves. Then she closed the notebook gently and held it against her chest. I know who has been there for me, she said, and I know who hasn't. Megan stepped forward first. Grandma, she said, voice tight but controlled. That's not fair. We all have lives. Just because Tori. Sit down, Megan. Grandma didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Megan stopped mid-sentence. Actually stopped, like something in her had hit a wall she didn't know how to move through. My mother finally spoke. Mom, please, she said, forcing a smile that didn't hold. This isn't the time for this. We can talk about it privately. Grandma turned her head slowly. No, she said. We've been private long enough. That word private landed differently now. It echoed. Not an accusation. In truth, a movement to the side caught my attention. Uncle Robert. Aunt Linda's husband. He stood up quietly, adjusting his sleeve like he was about to step into something he had already decided on. Eleanor asked me to say something, he said. Aunt Linda grabbed his arm. Robert, don't. He looked at her, not angry, not apologetic, just done. I saw the messages, he said, turning toward the crowd. 6 months ago, on Linda's phone, a group chat called Real Family Only. The air shifted again, sharper this time. I read through it, he continued. 7 years of conversations. Mocking Tori. Calling her names. Betting on her life like it was entertainment. A low murmur spread through the guests. Not loud, but enough. Aunt Linda's grip tightened on his arm. That was private, she snapped. You had no right. I had every right, Robert said, his voice still level. Because what you were doing wasn't private. It was cruel. No one interrupted after that. Not Megan. Not my mother. No one. I showed everything to Eleanor, he added. Every message. Grandma nodded once. I've read them, she said quietly. All of them. Megan's composure broke first. That's taken out of context, she said quickly. We were joking. People joke. It wasn't. Charity case, Grandma said. Just those 2 words. Megan went still. The bets, Grandma continued. The comments about her marriage. The celebration when it ended. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. My own daughter, she said, her voice tightening just slightly, wrote that she was relieved Tori didn't have children. My mother's face crumpled. Mom, I didn't mean it like that. Those were your exact words, Diane. No anger, just precision. And somehow, that was worse. The crowd had gone completely silent now. Not uncomfortable, not curious, still. Because there are moments when people realize they're witnessing something real and instinctively know not to interrupt it. Grandma took a slow breath. I waited, she said. I didn't say anything right away. She looked around the yard at the neighbors, the friends, the extended family. I wanted the truth to be heard where it couldn't be denied, not whispered, not explained away. Her hand tightened around mine again. Because this isn't about embarrassment, she said. It's about understanding what family actually means. Megan shook her head, backing up slightly. This is insane, she muttered. You're blowing this out of proportion. Grandma didn't respond to her. Instead, she reached into her pocket. This time, it wasn't the notebook. It was a folded document. Neat. Deliberate. I made a decision 3 months ago, she said. Robert stepped slightly closer, not in front, not leading, just present. I had my will updated. That was when the tension shifted again. Not shock yet, but the edge of it. Aunt Linda let out a small, disbelieving laugh. You can't be serious. I am, Grandma replied. Megan's voice came sharper now. Grandma, you don't have to do this. Whatever this is, we can fix it. Grandma looked at her, really looked. Some things, she said gently, aren't fixed by pretending they didn't happen. She unfolded the paper. The sound of it was small, but in that silence it carried. And for the first time that entire evening, no one knew what was coming next. Grandma held the paper steady. Not dramatic. Not trembling. Just certain. My house, she began, her voice clear. This house will go to my granddaughter, Tori Reynolds. For a second, no one reacted. It was like the words didn't fully land. Then they did. Megan inhaled sharply. What? Aunt Linda actually stepped forward. That's not how this works. Grandma didn't look at her. She has cared for this home for 10 years, she continued. Cleaned it, maintained it, filled it with presents when it would have otherwise been empty. My chest tightened, but I didn't move. I didn't speak, because this wasn't something I needed to claim. It was being given, in truth. The rest of my assets, Grandma said, will be divided equally among my children and grandchildren. A pause. Balanced. Fair. But not blind. This isn't punishment, she added, finally lifting her eyes toward my mother. It's alignment. My mother looked like she couldn't find her footing. Mom, you don't have to do this publicly, she said, voice unsteady. We can talk about it as a family. We are talking about it as a family, Grandma replied. That word family shifted again, redefined in real time. Megan shook her head, stepping closer. This is because of that stupid chat, she said, her composure cracking. You're letting something private. It wasn't private, Grandma interrupted softly. It was hidden. Silence. You spent 7 years deciding who was real family, she continued. Now I'm deciding what that actually means. Aunt Linda crossed her arms tightly. Tori isn't even, she started, then stopped. But it was too late. The sentence had already formed. Grandma turned to her slowly. Not even what? She asked. Linda didn't answer. Couldn't. Because there was no version of that sentence that would survive being said out loud in front of everyone. Grandma held her gaze for a moment longer, then looked back at the paper. This decision is legal, she said calmly. It's documented. It's final. Robert nodded once, confirming it without words. Megan's eyes filled, but this time, it wasn't controlled. Grandma, please, she said, her voice breaking. You're choosing her over all of us. Grandma's expression softened slightly. No, she said. I'm recognizing what already exists. That landed harder than anything else, because it wasn't framed as loss. It was framed as truth. Megan stepped back like she had been pushed. My mother sank into the nearest chair. Aunt Linda looked at Robert like she didn't know him anymore. And through all of it, I just stood there, not victorious, not overwhelmed, just present. Grandma folded the paper again, carefully this time, and placed it back into her pocket. I've said what I needed to say, she continued. Now everyone here understands what I've understood for a long time. She turned slightly toward the guests. What family is, she said, is not who talks the loudest about it. Her hand found mine again. It's who shows up when no one is watching. No one clapped, no one moved. Because applause would have felt wrong. This wasn't a performance. It was a correction. Megan wiped her face quickly, trying to pull herself back together. We can fix this, she said again, but quieter now. Tori, just say something. Tell her this isn't necessary. All eyes shifted to me. For the first time that night, not as an afterthought. As the center, I felt it. That weight. But it didn't crush me. Because I wasn't standing there to defend myself anymore. I stepped forward slightly. Not away from Grandma. Just enough to speak clearly. I'm not going to argue, I said. My voice didn't shake. I'm not going to list everything I saw or repeat what was said. Megan's shoulders tensed. My mother looked up slowly. Because I don't need to, I continued. You already said it. A breath moved through the crowd. Soft, almost collective. For 7 years, I said. You had a place where I didn't exist as family. I looked at Megan, then at my mother, then at Aunt Linda. You made that decision a long time ago. Silence. I'm just accepting it now. Megan shook her head. That's not what we meant. It is, I said gently. Not sharp, not angry, just clear. I'm not angry anymore, I added. And I'm not here to embarrass anyone. That was important. I meant it. I'm just done trying to belong somewhere I was never included. My mother's eyes filled. Tori, she whispered. But there was nothing else after my name. No explanation left. No version of the past that could be reshaped in that moment. I exhaled slowly. I wish you all well, I said. I really do. And I did. Not in a distant, polite way. In a way that came from finally stepping out of something that had been holding me in place for years. I just won't be part of this anymore. No anger. No raised voice. Just a boundary. Clear. And finally, mine. No one argued after that. Not because they agreed. Because there was nothing left to hold on to. The party didn't end all at once, it unraveled. Quietly. Guests began gathering their things, voices lowered, conversations cut short before they could fully form. People avoided eye contact with my mother, with Megan, with Aunt Linda. Not out of cruelty. Out of discomfort. Because once something like that is said out loud, you can't pretend you didn't hear it. I stood beside Grandma as people passed us one by one. Some nodded. Some offered small, careful smiles. A few stopped. My dear, an older woman said softly, squeezing my arm. I've seen you come here every week. Your grandmother is lucky. I didn't know her name, but she knew me. That mattered more. Another man, one of Grandma's longtime neighbors, paused near the gate. If Eleanor says you're her family, he said simply, that's enough for me. Small moments, quiet ones, but they landed deeper than anything loud ever could. Across the yard, Megan stood alone for the first time I could remember. No one orbiting her, no one reinforcing her. Her mascara had smudged slightly, but she hadn't noticed. Or maybe she had, and it just didn't matter anymore. She looked smaller. Not physically, socially. Like something that used to hold her up had been taken away. My mother hadn't moved much. Still sitting, hands in her lap, eyes unfocused. The kind of stillness that comes when someone is forced to sit with something they've avoided for years. Aunt Linda wasn't quiet. Her voice carried in sharp bursts from across the catering table. You had no right, she was saying to Robert. You ruined everything. Robert didn't raise his voice. I didn't ruin anything, he replied. I just didn't hide it anymore. That was the difference. I didn't feel satisfaction watching any of it. No sense of winning. No sense of revenge. Just distance. Like I had stepped out of something that was still collapsing behind me. Grandma touched my arm gently. Help me inside? She asked. I nodded. We walked slowly through the house, away from the voices, away from the weight of what had just happened. The living room felt quieter, softer, like the air had reset. I helped her sit down, adjusting the cushion behind her back the way I always did. She watched me for a moment. Then she smiled. Best birthday I've had in years, she said. I let out a small breath. Really? She nodded. Truth has a way of making things lighter, she replied. I sat down beside her. For the first time that day, my shoulders relaxed completely. Not because everything was fixed, but because everything was clear. And sometimes, clarity is the closest thing to peace you get. The fallout didn't come all at once. It moved in layers. First, silence. No calls from Megan. No messages from my mother. The group chat stayed gone like it had never existed. Then came distance. I heard, through someone else, that Megan had made her account private. Comments turned off. Posts deleted. The version of her that lived online, suddenly quieter. My mother stopped showing up to the usual gatherings. Book club, weekend lunches, excuses replaced appearances. People talk. Not loudly, but enough. I didn't follow any of it closely. I didn't need to. Because none of those changes were mine to manage. A few days later, I went back to Grandma's house. She was in the garden, notebook open, writing like always. She looked up when I walked in. "There you are," she said. And just like that, everything felt simple again. I sat beside her on the old wooden bench, the same one we'd used for years. No audience, no tension, just quiet. "Are you okay?" she asked. I thought about it, really thought this time. Not about the party, not about the messages, but about the space after everything had settled. "I think I am," I said. She nodded, like she had already known. "I kept track," she said softly, tapping the notebook. "Not to expose anyone, but to remember what mattered." I looked at her hands, then out at the garden. For years I thought family was something I had to earn, prove, hold on to. But sitting there, I understood something different. You don't chase belonging. You recognize where it already exists and where it doesn't. And then you choose accordingly. If you understand quiet strength, you belong here.